Welcome to another program of Tok Piksa. On Tuesday, Treasurer Don Pollier handed down Papua New Guinea's 2014 national budget. A record budget of 15 billion kina, it comes on the back of a sliding kina and concerns over the country's debt levels. But Treasurer Pollier is confident of positive results with the expectation of new revenue streams from the first gas production of the LNG project. In this Tok Piksa special, Scott Whitehead takes a closer look at the 2014 national budget.
In November 2012, the government passed Papua New Guinea's first budget with the next 5 years in mind. This 5-year money plan set out future expenditures on areas like infrastructure, health, education, policing, based on an unprecedented 13.2 billion kina.
The third component of this budget you see is a paradigm shift from the previous one-year budget to one that is multi-year phase, next 5 years.
Instead of a separate budget for recurrent expenditure and public investment spending, Treasurer Don Pollier presented a more corporate-looking integrated budget, clearly stating long-term capital expenses and operational costs for all areas of government spending.
We've been ending on budgets for every year. But we said, hang on, let's ask this question. Does it give us a vision for the future? We've got a medium-term development strategy that is 5 years, medium-term. We've got a fiscal management policy or strategy that is also designed for a 5-year period. And of course, we've got a much longer policy in Vision 2050 that talks about a long-term visions we have. What's the best way to approach our budget? The money plan. We're saying, rather than just doing 1 year, we think it is much better to give the nation, the private sector, the people, the 3 tiers of government, and the stakeholders that here is the 5 years money plan inconsistent to the other 5-year or the medium-term plans we have in the country.
On Tuesday, the budget for the second year in this multi-year financing arrangement was handed down again by Treasurer Don Pollier.
The budget itself is based on the government's economic development strategies. With all this assessment we make, we look at our Vision 2050. We look at the PNC Development Strategic Plan of 2010-2030.
Budget 2014 stands at a staggering 15 billion kina. It's an increase of 1.3 billion from last year's budget. According to budget figures, half of that 15 billion kina budget will go to public investment programs. That's long-term spending on roads, education, and other crucial infrastructure.
Now you will understand that the Prime Minister, and you will see a big program in the budget related to the regional urban service delivery centres, Port Moresby, Lae, Kokopo and Hagen. In the same manner, we are saying through the PSIP program, through provincial affairs, what they're establishing, that in the same manner you have the urban regional delivery centres, you come down to the provincial centre, you come down to the district headquarters, the local level government headquarters, what we are calling a ward cluster delivery centre, and then the ward itself as the smallest political unit down there. And we are trying to build through the PSIP program and the other government programs what is expected as a minimum at those particular service delivery points. And part of the new PSIP, DSIP guidelines begins that process.
The idea is to create an economy of the future that is sustainable and not totally reliant on mineral and petroleum export earnings.
Because I'm seeing a frightening situation. If we do not implement those monies properly, we will blame ourselves that the management speed drop. The other thing is the rest of the world is going to go ahead of us and we're going to be trailing behind. It's a frightening situation. All of us have got children. What do we do with them? The public servants, ministers like me, the people, all of us going to say, look, we are little in our capacity, but we can implement this budget. We can say that implement it correctly.
But in order to do that, road links, airports, and communications infrastructures need to be improved to a level where there is free flow of goods and services between rural and urban centers. In 2014, 2.7 billion kina will be spent on the infrastructure sector. Over 1.6 billion kina will be given to the Works Department for the construction of new roads and bridges throughout the country. More than 300 million kina of that money will come from donor funding.
The objective of any budget is to improve the living standards of the people, whether it be a personal budget or a company budget. The objective is to ensure that goods and services are delivered to the people. So once again, the objectives of focusing on the rural areas is definitely the right way to go. We just need to ensure that we put in the right processes and mechanisms in place so that we achieve the objectives.
The Independent Public Business Corporation, the government body responsible for the management of state-owned companies, will be given 500 million kina worth of funding. Over 55 billion kina will go towards building the LNG fiber cable network. Over 47 million kina will be used for ongoing work on the Leh port development. As part of PNG Power's ongoing improvement, the government has allocated more than 400 million kina for the upgrade of existing systems. Speaking less than 2 weeks ago, State Enterprises Minister Ben Micah hinted at what should be expected in the next 12 months.
Government will mostly be spending funds now on upgrading the transmission capacity to carry much more higher voltage of power. And also through distribution, but in the longer term, I'm also looking at privatizing the distribution of power. For example, private companies will now be given contracts to connect power, disconnect power, and to maintain, the retail end of the power.
You're watching Tok Piksa. This is the second year of an integrated multi-year budget, a budget that has a more corporate look. In the 2014 budget and in budgets after that, phrases like operational costs and capital expenses will come into common usage as the government modernizes its approach to money management. Taking lessons learned in 2013, budget implementation is now a key focus.
Since 2012, education has received amongst the highest amount of funding. While some view this as a means of securing the government's political future, it also represents a significant investment in the future of Papua New Guinea. Next year, education funding will be further increased. An additional 160 million kina will be added to this year's funding, bringing the total to 1.5 billion.
I'd like us to do a lot of reforms too. We've got to really modernize our culture, our thinking.
The O'Neill Dion government is maintaining a fee-free tuition policy for students from elementary school to grade 12. The policy is costing more than 500 million kina. It is also a policy that has resulted in serious problems in nearly all primary and secondary schools. Teachers have been put under pressure with increasing enrollment spurred by the tuition-free policy. Several measures have been taken to rectify the problem. The retirement age of teachers has been raised and distance education options have been strengthened. Future investment in health also feature prominently in the 2014 budget. 1.4 billion kina is going to the Department of Health and Hospital Management Services, and the increased funding takes into account the upgrade of 16 major hospitals, including 65 million kina for the design of Leh's Angau Hospital. Other key areas include law and order, the rebuilding of the Defence Force, and the building of an agriculture sector through increased funding to the National Development Bank and small to medium enterprises. The unprecedented funding levels in the 2014 budget mean there are serious challenges ahead.
What's happening is in PNG, I think with the solid figures given, the statistics that's on the board, given by the secretaries, I think we are very, very sound at present. We are projecting to grow 6.2% next year. We have reversed ourselves back to about 5.1% this year from a MIFO report of 6.1%, but we reversed ourselves backward. And there are valid reasons for that. But next year, PNG will be growing at 6% because the projections show that our trading partners will do well, and therefore it will give us a upgraded profile as well.
The planning department figures indicate that 80% of the 2013 budget has been expended, but they're unsure of the details. Statistics remain a major issue when it comes to quantifying how much of the 2013 budget has been spent, how many jobs have been created, and what kind of impact the money has had. For the first time in many years, there is now strong emphasis on keeping tabs on actual service delivery. Units have been set up to ensure there is high-level monitoring based on achievable milestones. Last week, the Finance Secretary told a gathering of all provincial and district treasurers that officers who don't perform would be removed.
We have every confidence that that the budget will deliver on the expected outcomes. The challenge is on us, and that's why I've said that this workshop is timely, because people that are actually going to deliver on the budget, in terms of budget implementation, is the provincial and district treasuries. So it is the onus is on us to support the government and the politicians to help deliver the budget.
The Treasury plays a crucial part in keeping the budget mechanisms well-oiled and functioning. However, experiences in 2013 have shown that developments have not happened as they should. Funding has not been released on time, and project implementation has been delayed, leaving provincial governments and districts frustrated.
Well, let's now organize ourselves so that we can support the delivery of the budget. Now the focus is on us to deliver. The Treasury has done its job, planning have done their job in terms of framing the budget together and delivering. Now for us to do the expenditure bit, take control of expenditure so that we channel resources to where it's supposed to be, so that our people begin to see the changes on the ground in Maniamia, in Telephone, everywhere in our places.
Welcome back to Tok Piksa. There have been mixed reactions to the 2014 budget. Next week, the opposition is expected to give its reply, and Parliament will then take a vote to pass it. If there is one thing the O'Neill-Dion government has been doing right, it is that messages in the lead-up to the formation of the budget have been consistent. No new taxes, less spending and tighter control of available funds, building on foundations previously set for health, education and infrastructure, and a stronger, more coordinated approach to promoting involvement by our people through agriculture and the small to medium enterprises sector. The challenge now is to ensure that as much as possible is implemented.
As a small economy globally, Papua New Guinea's economic buoyancy is determined by global factors including the demands of its trading partners like large economies of Australia and the US, as well as emerging economies like China. This year, the global economy went through a series of transitions. The world saw a slowdown in the US and Australian economies, and now a gradual recovery with increasing demand for trade.
And also we're seeing close door to Australia is also doing quite strongly. We're looking across to Malaysia, Indonesia, and China. Some of those emerging economies have moderated in the growth because of the challenges faced in the global economic outlook, but they're also projected to turn around in 2014. When we do our budget, we look at how will that affect and impact on Papua New Guinea's own economy. Because, some time back, most of us didn't really understand very well as a new country, a new economy. We thought that things happens in PNG, and we never thought about what happened, how it affects us. And
The International Monetary Fund expects the world economy to grow by 2.9% this year. This means a demand for raw materials and other commodities that Papua New Guinea supplies. The strengthening economies mean pressure on our currency, and while there are concerns over the strength of the kina, Treasurer Don Pollier says the management of the currency is in good hands, with the central bank taking stock of the situation.
And the information going out to the public has been very, very misleading. And I'd like to encourage all of us, especially the media, to look at what's happening in the broader perspective, and then you talk about PNG.
Domestically, Papua New Guinea's growth, according to government assessments, continues to draw confidence from investors. The Papua New Guinea economy is expected to grow by a little over 5% this year. But in 2014, revenue is expected to see a sharp increase as Papua New Guinea sees the production of first gas from the PNG LNG project.
We have reversed ourselves back to about 5.1% this year.
This in turn is expected to propel the growth rate to 6.2%. 2014 is also expected to see strong recovery in the agriculture sector, and the government says it is consciously investing through the National Development Bank. More than 80 million kina has been put to the NDB to enhance the development of agriculture-based small to medium enterprises. All this follows a list of recommendations made at the SME Summit in Medang early this year.
Other countries have done a lot for the SME sector. You've heard about countries like Malaysia, even Australia.
The recommendations include suggestions for more funding to agriculture, more funding to Papua New Guinean-owned businesses, and strong government budgetary support. While the 2014 outlook is promising, the challenges of effective service delivery remains. Factors like corruption, inefficiencies, lack of capacity, and poor performance unless tough action is taken and accurate monitoring maintained.
We are little in our capacity, but we can implement this budget. We can say that implement it correctly. Cutting out the wastes, not putting ghost names in, not coming to work late 1 hour after, 2 hours after, not leaving for home earlier, not going to the pockets, not getting drunk. You talk about capacity. What capacity are you talking about? You have the capacity. You don't utilize yourself to the full capacity that you should be using yourselves. I'm not using myself fully. I want to use myself fully.
That has been a special Tok Piksa program on Budget 2014. See you next time.
Goodbye.